Hi, I'm David Wigener, of course you know me, and here is a special session for Luke Hurley's partner in Auckland who is learning to play chess. Anyone else can watch too, but I've already spoken about how the pieces move in chess. Now really speaking, I should go right back to the ball game and get a position setter, clear board, and just put a king on its original square and a king on its original square, and I'm going to put a pawn on for you too. Now that's what I'm going to do. Now whoever's move it is, it's probably white's. So that's the move that white can play here. Now, as I've explained, pawns move forward one or two squares on their first move as long as something isn't in its way. Pawns can only capture diagonally, and they cannot capture diagonally like this from here to here. So they can't, and they can't capture their own colour. They can't jump over their own colour, as explained in the first session for you. So here we've got white should win this position. Now what does that mean, win this position? Well, this pawn, as I've explained, can not this particular position. This pawn here can advance and become a queen or a rook or a bishop or a knight. Excuse me, something happened to my throat. So this pawn can become excuse me, can become a queen, a rook, or a bishop, or a knight. That's pretty cool, eh? So it can become one of those by, as I previously mentioned, reaching the 8th rank, which this is the 8th rank. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And if black can capture it, then it's no good. Then the pawn loss will result in a equal, which is a draw in chess. So no one wins, it's just share a half a point each for the score register. So this pawn wants to get over to the other side. Now if we push it now just like this, that's check, by the way. Now check is where the king is attacked. Now if you have a look at this, okay, the pawn can take the king, but it's not allowed to take the king in chess. It can only check, which is threaten the king with attack. The king is hereby attacked by the pawn with check. Now for this exercise, we're going to let this pawn run to here. Now if this pawn now plays to e8, making itself into a queen or a rook, I do not suggest a knight or a bishop, because then white would not be able to win if we make this a bishop, even though we're going to take it with the black king, because it's unprotected. It's not protected by anything. So if whatever moves here next, the king can just merely take it, even if it's a queen. That's the funny thing about chess. So what I'm going to teach you here is about unprotected and protected. So here we have this move. Now if we make it a bishop, okay, it comes up on my computer screen from the computer engine, insufficient material for white to win, so it's a draw. Okay, now I'll go back and now I'll make it into a knight. Watch what happens. See, I can make it into a queen promotion. It's called queen promotion, rook promotion, bishop promotion or knight promotion. And sometimes in chess it's better to make it into a knight or a bishop or a rook, not always a queen. But everyone always gravitates to making it the greatest piece that is the most maneuverable on the chessboard. And as I've previously mentioned, you cannot leave it being a pawn. Once it's promoted, it has to turn into something, not another pawn, and not a king. You can never promote your pawn into a king. Okay, so we would have a queen here, and notice we'll just go new variation. If I move away from here, there's nothing saying that white has insufficient material to win. But if I take the queen, because it's check, I can take it because it's not protected. So I can take it, and it says again, this insufficient material to win. Okay, now if you look, both kings are only on the board. There's no other thing. Now what does this thing mean about insufficient material for either side to win? This is what is a draw. Both these kings cannot attack each other. It's going to keep saying this. Okay, now I've reached this position on purpose for you. Watch this. I'm trying to move the king to attack the other king with my king, but the computer will not allow it. Now I'll give you an example of a move. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves that black can play, and there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that white can play if it was white's move, which it isn't, it's black's move. So stick to the program, David Wegener. King here is possible, and it comes up with this insufficient material. King here is possible, insufficient material. So both kings cannot attack each other, cannot win the other king, even though my wonderful sister said that she can attack my king with her king. It's against the rules of chess. So we need something to win here for white or black respectively in this position. If I change the position and I put a pawn on, then it can happen. But I'm going to go right back to the start, where I'm going to go purposely allow this pawn to march to what is called the 8th rank, which is, as previously mentioned, it's now for white on the 7th rank, but this is only the 2nd rank for black. This is the 1st rank for black, the 2nd rank, 3rd rank, and successively, and this is the 1st rank for white. This is where white begins, and this is their home neighborhood patch sort of thing, and this is black's neighborhood patch. So here, if pawn here, and it becomes a rook even, notice that this is a draw, insufficient material. Okay, and notice that this is not suggesting that it's a win for black or draw. Black is lost here with good normal play from white. White still has to be careful, because if they're careless and black gets to win this rook, it's now curtains for anyone winning this game, because no one's going to win it, even if one of the players exceeds the time control, which is another element in chess that's very important, which is particularly, or in particular, one of my favorite parts of chess is time, because I'm very good at speed chess. I'm not the world's champion or something like that, but I'm pretty reasonable at lightning chess. So we're going to go right back to the start, And now we're going to deviate. This time we are going to protect the pawn, because if we don't protect the pawn, which can become into a piece of a knight, bishop, rook or queen, not king, not pawn, and it doesn't have to promote itself the next move as I've shown. It can just wait till an opportune moment to do the same. So here we have a pawn and a king and a king, and this is primarily, fundamentally, basically speaking, a win for white, but white has to be very careful. Now first I will show you protection of this e pawn that is incorrect. Now I'm going to go to the new main line for the computer's sake. Now here comes black wanting to attack this pawn. They can't yet because they can only move one square at a time. This king comes up here and this king comes up here to defend. Or I could go somewhere else like here. Now if e5, which is called e5, don't worry about what it's called, please, Luke's partner, or better half as I call you, don't worry about this check, because if I move away it's no good. I can just take it and we've got a draw again. Half a point. No point for white, no point for black, just a half a point. There are some ways you can get a draw in chess, by the way. There are draws by mutual agreement, where both players are both scared of each other, or both respect each other, or both can't be bothered playing the game, so they just say, look, I'd rather go for a beer, or I'd rather do this, or I'd rather go home for tea or watch the movie, or I can't be bothered playing chess, and they both agree, or one's clearly ahead of the other in the game, and the actual result for the tournament or so, etc., or it's just too late, or blah blah blah, they can't want to have an adjournment. So they can agree by asking the other player, would you like a draw? Now a draw is half a point, they share the point. Now they share the point, they don't get a point each, they just get a half a point each. So here we've got this position which can occur quite often in chess. So we have this move here. Now if white goes here, they may win, but they're probably still only going to draw. Why is that? If king here, then this is very good again for white, as I will show you in the subsequent position. Now what other move can white do here? White can go here, then black goes here, white goes here, and we can sort of, what is called in chess, repeat moves. Because if we repeat moves, I will show you. It comes up with a threefold repetition. So the threefold repetition is absolutely identical play from both sides of the board, that they've both played exactly the same moves threefold. So basically they played 6 identical moves, even though white and black are involved, and so that results in a threefold repetition that can happen as early as the starting position. So I will go back to the restart, because otherwise it's just going to say it's a draw. And so we'll go through, the computer does all this for me, and here white's next move would really want to be possibly here, unless they want to trick their opponent. Now best play here is here, And if king here, king here. Now, notice the king cannot come here, ma'am. But it is white's turn. It's not black's turn, even though we can do that. But here we go here. I don't know what's happened here. Please bear with me. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm getting what's called, doesn't matter what it's called, but it's called the opposition. By playing here, notice that there's an odd amount of squares between my king, if you like, and your king, the white king. So here, the king is like a magnet against another magnet. They can't join up, they can't go together. They're like the same pole from the magnet. They're either from the north or the south of the magnet. I think I'm correct there. So they're both repelling each other. Whoever's move it is here, other than the pawn move, okay, which we're going to get to, whoever's move it is here has got to fight against this magnet thing, this kind of what's called in chess opposition, the opposing force. And so in chess we've got a term called the opposition. Now if the king is here, then it's an even amount of squares, not odd. So whoever's move it is can move to the opposition and thereby gain the opposition. Even if they move back, there's still 1, 2, 3 squares here. But they do want to watch this pawn. So what I'm doing here is, this is the next move. And this is no good, because it's I've gone backwards. So king here, and really, to be absolutely blunt and frank and everything like that, there's no other way for white to go here than to push this pawn, because otherwise we're just going to possibly repeat the moves in the history of the previous moves all over again. And as I said, this pawn cannot go backwards to rethink its plan. Once it moves, it moves. Once you make a move in chess, the move stands, especially when you take your hand off it. Now when whatever the piece is that is in your command, so when you move a pawn and you take your hand off it, depending on who you're playing and the situation, circumstances of that game, you do not try to take it back. It's actually okay with a lot of chess players. They do allow you to take it back, and there are even with clocks being used to keep a time on the game, to stop them from playing too long. Basically, your opponent, by sitting there stalling for 2.4 hours each move, so clocks were introduced. But here there's no real advantage to white to move their king again. Their next move is here, e7. And here we come to black stands their ground. Okay, they play here. If they play here, big blunder, because this would become, let's say it's a bishop, insufficient material. Black cannot get checkmated by white. So we go back just to drum it in, a knight, new variation, insufficient material. What does that mean? Well, it means that the black king cannot be won by white, or checkmated, or attacked where it cannot get out of check. It cannot get out of attack. it has to be lost to white's forces. So this is insufficient material. But let's just go back here. Here's check. Now if king here, then we can make this into a rook. Makes it a wee bit harder because a rook is a little bit more difficult to checkmate or win the king. Even though you can't win the king, you can only put it in a position that it can't escape being eaten up. If we make this a rook, then it doesn't say it's insufficient material. So this is what I will show you in a future session. We will keep to the program now. Now, as I said earlier, it is best for black to stand their ground here. Now I want to show you what can white do if they move away from here. Notice the red line, the red arrow pointing towards the white pawn for black. The black king has a red arrow pointing to the pawn. That is the computer showing you and me or anyone else watching this that the pawn can be captured by the king on what's called E8. If the king moves here, because the pawn can't move, it can't go, it can't take some in here. There's nothing to take. If it could, it can, but it can't. So the pawn cannot move here at all. If it's black's turn, then this is the only move that black can play. Can't go there, can only go there, but it's not black's turn. The computer will not allow me to make two black moves in a row. We can only go white, black, white, black, white, black. That's very finite in chess. It does not ever change unless you play a trick on your opponent or whatever sort of thing like that. But it's not the rules of chess. Black, white, white, black, white, black. White begins, my mother says, and wins. Wit begint, in Dutch she says, wit begint and wins, or wins, whatever that is in Dutch. Und wins in German, und, which is and wins. But I don't know what it is in German either. I just know what it is in English or Kiwi language. So here we go. That sounds like a sandwich. So here we go. It's white's move here. Now, as previously mentioned, if the king moves away from what is called the protection of the pawn, then black can, if they want so wish, lift it by taking it. Watch this. Insufficient material. No win is possible other than if someone's stupid enough to say, I resign. I don't care. I know it's a draw. It's only a half point, but I resign. So I'm going back now to this position here. Now the only move for white, which is in, doesn't matter, I'm not going to bore you with details about how chess players write this down in a book, okay? But I will tell you just for interest's sake, because you'll probably ask me what it is. They draw a box next to the move. That means it's the only move for white. There are other moves, of course, for white, which I've explained, but they lose the chance to win here. The only way for white to protect this pawn at the same time as move is, the only move is king here. Now watch this. Now it says it's stalemate. Now stalemate is black has a compulsion to move, and there are examples of having to move which are in this case white's advantage if that was the case. But here Black has no pawn or anything like that to move, that they can move, or any piece. The only piece that black has on the board, you will appreciate, is a black king. Now I'm going to show you, can the king move anywhere? So because white has inflicted on black what is classed and called and termed as stalemate, which is a stale checkmate. It's gone wrong, it's bad, it's off, the milk is gone off, it's now starting to smell or whatever. You can't drink the milk, you can't claim a point because white has been stubborn enough to play this whole thing wrong. So now I know you're in the deep end, but that's very, very good. Now I'm going to go right back to where it all began. Now that sounds like a song. Now I'm going to play this to my best ability to generate a win here for white. Now if we try to march the pawn first, this is really good stuff I'm teaching you here. If this is what you will beat Luke with easily, if you learn what I'm saying here. If this pawn in this situation, which is called an endgame, moves all the way, even with protection of the king coming up behind it, behind the pawn. The king is behind the pawn at the moment, isn't it? But if this king remains behind the pawn, it actually makes it more difficult or more prone to being a drawn position or half a point where neither party win if they play well. Black, by the way, cannot win this position. The only thing that black can hope for in this position is a draw, nothing else. Black has nothing, even though white has the game still going, because checkmate is possible with a rook or a queen, but not a bishop or a knight on their own if this gets to promote onto the 8th square with protection from the white king helping it get there. If the white king isn't up there and the black king runs away, then it's very, very foolhardy of black to do something like this, because the pawn will march even in this position. So the black king wants to do its very darndest to prevent this pawn from reaching its ultimate square and becoming a queen or a rook. It can become other things, but it's very bad for white to do that, because as I've shown, it's an instant draw. So here we have the starting position. Now it doesn't really matter whose move here it is first, because I believe that this position is one for white. Now I can actually put it on the computer and then just let the computer show the best play, and you can, of course, you can actually turn the you can pause the screen to watch the moves slower. So we're going to play now with the aid of the engine the best moves for white and possibly for black. Okay, so I now push my space bar, which forces move King D2. This is called King D2. Now I'm going to force feed these things to you. Now remember what I said about odd amount of moves between the king and that. Now the king is actually going to come in front of the pawn so that it can get guidance. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. What I'm teaching you here is something a lot of chess players do not know. Now notice the move king here. Now white has, if the pawn's not here, white has the opposition. White has, if it's black's move, the opposition. It's a bit deep what I'm saying, but just have a look. There's 1, 2, 3 squares between them, and if it's black's move, black has the opposition against white. So favourable for black if it's white's move. It's favourable to white if black is to move here, even though we have got a pawn on board. Okay, now I'm going to continue on with this. I'm going to do no more talking. I'm going to let the chess pieces, like Luke Hurley says, to do. Now, funnily enough, the king does not go to where I earlier highlighted or purported to. Now, this is what I would consider the best move for black. Now, if it keeps doing this, now see, this is what we can call a waiting move. Why does the computer, I wasn't going to do any talking, was I? You know me. But I wasn't going to do any talking, but white has just played a move where they could play pawn to what's called pawn to e4. They could have moved the pawn 2 squares, even at this stage of the game. Even though there's hardly anything on the board, they could have moved their pawn up to e4, but it's moved up to e3. Now this is an example of what I'm talking about. e1, e2, e3. The pawn has just come from e2. It cannot go on e1, it's impossible. Can't go backwards either, but it's just gone to e3. Now if, sorry, excuse my mouse. If I go to e4, that becomes more difficult, like the last example I showed you, where the king is not really in front of the pawn. So white's sort of playing kind of a waiting move that keeps what I've mentioned, the 2 magnets here. Now that's a way that you can remember about the opposition in chess, is you can work this out from one side of the board to the other, because if there's an odd, even if it's a diagonal, if this king is here and the other king for white is here, then you can count these squares, 2, 3, it's odd, even of course, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you are to move as white, you get the opposition, even though that king for black is over here and this white king is over here on that square. If you have an odd amount of squares between your king and their king, you can work out opposition even from the other side of the board, if you get what I mean. If you don't, please text me and ask me to explain further, or call me. That's quite delightful. I quite like talking to you. So we are now, black is only able to move a king. They've got nothing else to move. They can only move a king, so they have to move it somewhere. The computer is suggesting a few purple lines here. They cannot go here, cannot go here, cannot go here, even though my sister said she can, but I can't. The king can go here. That would be a mistake. I want to stick to the main program. The best move for black here is to stay in the vicinity of this pawn that wants to advance. Now watch the next move. I believe that the king, as it's shown already, is going to move in front of its pawn, and it does. Now white has the opposition, so black has to do something about the opposition, because as I've said, only black can move a king, can't move a pawn or bishop or knight or rook or queen. They're all pawns. It can't move, and it can only move one thing at a time. It cannot move anything else in the world. Okay, so the king has to sort of go, I've got to do something. I've got to move. And so white is having the opposition in chess, the opposing force. It's a force. The king cannot move into white's, the black king cannot move into white's attacked squares, if you like. And it definitely can't move into an attack square where it can't move into an attack square, and it can't move into vicinity where the king could literally in real life take the other king if it moves in proximity to it by being one square away. It cannot do it. The rules of chess say it cannot move there. In lightning chess though, in speed chess, if the opponent plays as black here, king here, the computer won't allow me to play that. But in actual real life, if you're playing an opponent, they can take your king, or they can say, excuse me, Mr. Director of Play, my opponent's just played an illegal move, pushed my clock, has penalised my time control. I've now lost on time because I've had to put my hand up, and now my opponent's claiming that they've won, even though they've only got a king. They can't win. And all sorts of rules like this in chess, which are like a traffic rule, that this king cannot go there, but in real life it can, but black loses instantly instead of slowly. So now here, back to the program, white has opposition, the magnetic difference. Now it's suggesting for black to move primarily back, but it doesn't. It moves sideways. If black moves back, then white can just merely move forward, and that is a resulting win for white as well. But we will stick to the program. King here. Now, if white goes here, king here, then we're sort of repeating ourselves, where, you know, it's like a repeatingness of the position. But white here can basically enter into the 5th rank for white and the 4th rank for black. So now, guess what? White now enters into black's camp. So I'll show you, if king here, okay, then this pawn can start marching because it's got protection, and then the king can move up here and stuff. But I don't want to bore you with this. The king is here. Now the best move is not to do what the computer's suggesting, to go run over here somewhere. Maybe it wants to run away from, the writing is all over the wall. It does. It goes there. How pathetic. Now look. Now this is quite interesting, because this king cannot attack this pawn, can it? As the computer won't allow me, ma'am. He won't allow me. Or she won't allow me to move here. Won't allow me to move here. Won't allow me to move here. I can go one here. I can go one here. I can go one here. That's my whole move. One here or one here. I cannot go to these 3 squares, either one of them, even altogether. I can't land on any of these squares because the rules of chess prohibit me. I'm putting myself into harm's way. I'm putting myself into where I can be taken, and as I've mentioned earlier, I could be taken here if it was a lightning game or something, or I'm playing a friend. I can say, you played an illegal move in chess, so I win. And that is the rules of chess now, a lot of them. But what I want to do is I want to play a little bit better for black. After king here, I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to force white Now it's running away. I don't want it to run away. I want this to be the new main line, but I'll show you why this is no good. Now look at this. Now the king is in a position where white does not have to worry about the black king coming to these squares, but the black king can go to these squares. But notice something else. This king is now giving fruit to this advance of this pawn, which is our whole objective of this whole exercise. The difference between a draw and a win, as long as white still is sensible and uses their brain and doesn't think that it's a joke, that they don't make it into a bishop or knight, because then we're going back to a drawn position. So here we have this position, which is very, very possible in chess. And notice the next move is very obvious for reasonable chess players, including that of yourself. The pawn can now do what is called check, because it's checking and telling the king you are under attack. Now this is unique to the king. The king is the only piece that you have to or can announce check to. There are variations on whether or not you tell your opponent they're in check or not. But I learnt to say check to my opponent because it's kind of polite, but you can actually, if your opponent doesn't recognize their king is able to be captured by the pawn, which the computer won't allow, but it can be done with human warfare, if you like. Female to male, or male to male, female to female, females to males, and etc., and all that sort of stuff. So here the black king is what's called placed in check. It is attacked by an enemy force or piece, not the king. The white king cannot give check to the black king, but there are ways and means that I could finish this session on that the king can move out of check, out of the way of an attacking piece on the enemy king, which is a bit sort of gobbledygook, I know, can move and give what is called in chess a discovery check. Now a discovery check is kind of a wee bit basic. It means that you move something that is covering up an attack to the opponent's king, and when you move out of the way of the attack that's covered up or masked, then it's called a discovery check. Now the thing about chess is when your king or your opponent's king is in check, you cannot move anything else. Okay, so you can write that down. You can move other things, you can move other things, but you cannot make a move without recognizing the move check, because your opponent or you are checking your opponent with one of your pawns or pieces, not the king. So in this case, the king can be taken, as I've explained. Pawns can take diagonally. So here we've got probably about an hour session, which is, generally it's worth about $100 for an hour session, I believe, or $120 or something like that. But here we've got a check, but it's free to you because it's free, it's on YouTube. So here we've got a check, and when you are in check, or when you give check, your opponent must do something about the attack on their king or your king. So something has to happen. You cannot ignore it. You have to it's a finite rule in chess. You have to do, or your opponent has to do, something about chess check where a king is in check. So sometimes you can take the piece that is checking. You cannot go and have a party on the other side of the board while a king is in check. You have to either move out with your king, or their king, they have to move their king out of check, out of attack, to a safe square, or they have to try and take the piece, and if it's not an advantage to take it with a queen, and it's a pawn in this case, and the pawn is protected by other small pieces, it's not a good idea to take the pawn that is checking here. We have to imagine pieces on here like bishops and queens for both sides, and if the queen takes the pawn for black because it's check, it can do it, but it's not a good advantage sometimes, materialistically or economically or financially speaking, on the chessboard, because we've got values on the chessboard, that of the position and that of time or the clock. So here we've got check. So we've got a number of ways to get out of check. No matter whether you're black or white, whoever's in check, they have to do something there and then. They can't ignore check. You have to do something about it. So the 3-4 ways of getting out of check is the following. 1, to take the check piece, the piece that's checking your king. Sometimes you can take it, but you have to be careful, because as I've just said, sometimes it's not a good idea to take the king with sometimes it's not a good idea to take the checking piece to your king, we'll say, because it might lead you into a disadvantage for materialistic viewpoints. So we've got first to take the pawn here, which we can't, of course, but we're talking about the whole position being intact. So to take it, to move your king out of the attacking square, the square where your opponent, if they had another move after, can take your king, which they can't, but I don't want to get into the ramifications of that. So they can take it, move out of the attack with their king only. They can't move out with something else. They can block it. So if a queen far away is attacking the king on the white square, the black king on the white square, the king might be able to put something in the way. That's not always a good idea. And the only example of, there are only 3 ways to get out of check for your king, we're saying, in chess. With a knight, you cannot, if you get checked by a knight, you cannot, as I've mentioned to you, put a piece or something in the way of the check, because knights can jump over things, even their own piece or colour, their own pawn or whatever. So in chess, when you're checked with a knight, you only have 2 possible ways to get out of check. You cannot put something in the way. Whereas normally, if it's a pawn or a bishop or a rook or a queen checking the king, the opposing king, you can get out of check 3 ways: by taking it, the piece, and you have to look at it whether it's advantageous or not. Sometimes it's forced, you've got no choice. or to move out of check, or to put yourself out of harm's way, to put your king on a square where your opponent, not you, your opponent is not attacking that square. And the last one is to take the piece. So take, to move out, or to place something in the way of the attack line, or so the attacking squares coming at your king. So there are the 3 and 2 for a knight. Now, don't think it's an exam to learn that there's 2 ways to get out of check when it's a knight, and 3 ways. You can learn these things. They're quite good. It can stop you looking around for, if you're checked with a knight, to stop looking for something to put in the middle of it, because it's going to waste your time, which is when you're a champion that I'm going to make you into. That's very important time, especially in chess. So here we have this position. It's check. Believe me, the king cannot take the pawn, as I've previously shown, but repetition is very good, even for the New Zealand All Blacks. Their coach does exactly the same. So we've got king here. Now we will just try to stay within the program here, and I will move the king here. Then we have e7. Now notice still the king is being a buddy to the advancing pawn, and these squares, as I said before, are all being protected, as we call it, by the protection of the king, helping this pawn nurture its way all the way to the 8th rank. Now, as said before, if I make this into a bishop or a knight, it's more difficult. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it into a queen. So, yay! The pawn's got to the 8th rank, and there's rules about how to do that in chess too now. There's a lot of rules in chess. Now, the king cannot go here. The king cannot take here. The king cannot go here. So the computer's going to tell us what moves it can play. Now I'm going to show you a checkmate. Now this is what you've heard before. A checkmate. What is a checkmate? This is a checkmate. Now notice that black's king is very, very restrained. If I move here, okay, if I move here, it's stalemate. And so white will probably hit themselves because they're just bungled. It's now only a draw. There's no win for white here because black has to be able to make a move. Now if black doesn't get what's called checkmated, then it's a draw. But if black's got a pawn or something else to move, here they can't move the king, so they can't make a move into check. They can't move in their king into check. So it's called stalemate. It's kind of like a checkmate, but it's not quite. So this is termed as a stalemate. I have to hit the mouse now. Now I can go make this is checkmate in one move, and soon you will see these instantly. White has checkmate on the move with queen b7, what's called queen b7. Doesn't matter what the square's called, you don't have to learn that unless you want to record your game and write it down. This move is queen b7. Now notice it's checkmate, and now says on your screen, if you want to enlarge it across here, it says mate. Okay, it says mate. That's what I'm saying. The info is exclamation mark or information sign mate. Okay, and so I have to go, okay, I can't do anything else. I can't go forward with my cursor. It's checkmate, end of game, game over, kaput, zanjement, all that sort of thing. It's game over, next game please, or put away your popcorn, we'll stop watching. Okay, this is checkmate. Now what is checkmate? Here you can see that the king is attacked. So we're going to go through, it's attacked by the queen. Now what do I mean it's attacked by the queen? The queen is able to win the king. The king cannot move here because it's only allowed to move one square at a time. Now the king cannot move here. The king cannot take the queen because then the king just takes the king. But the king is not allowed to move here anyway, regardless of whether the queen's there or not. So if the queen is off the board, the king is still not allowed to move on to the square where the queen is departing from because it's an illegal move. Okay, the king cannot go in proximity to the white king, neither or the other one. If the queen's not here and it's white's move, which it isn't, because white's just played queen b7 checkmate, king cannot go here because the same thing. It cannot attack the opposing king with its own king. Finite rule. So here, if we try to take the queen, like the pawn before, that was guided with the king on f7, all the way from this square to this square to this square, here the king is what's called protecting the queen on b7 from capture of black. Now if we were to set this position up now with black to move, which it is, and hereby place a bishop on here, and now go okay, and now we're going back. Okay, now I'm going to go, for the sakes of this demonstration, it's black's move. Now see, this I can't take the queen. Okay, I can't take the queen, but guess what, if it's not checkmate now, because I can go push the key, and I've got a bishop and a king for black. Okay, and a king from Star Wars, obviously. Bishop b7, taking the queen. That was checking my king. So for the point of this exercise, it now says info David, information box or circle, insufficient material. Okay, insufficient material, which means black's actually got 3 points, but it's not enough to checkmate or win the white king, even though black is now got a material advantage. That's why it says insufficient material for black to win. So it's a draw, half a point. No one can argue that, not even if the opponent for black loses on time. But if we go back, I don't want to get too much into this, but if black loses on time in chess now, before they make their move, and white's just played the startling queen to b7 as it is check, it's not checkmate this time because the bishop can take it. Then if black loses on time and they don't get to play bishop takes queen, then they lose, because white has got, black has to still move, because at the moment white has got what is termed in chess checkmating or winning material. Even if they've got a pawn, it can be construed as checkmating material, and so forth. So, and that rule's changed a wee bit over time since I was a junior. So now I want to show you that this is insufficient material. Now I want to keep the bishop on board because I've promised to show you something. I've promised to show you a discovered check. Now, as you would appreciate, and that will be the end of my session for today, and I hope that you can understand some of the things I've mentioned and spoken about, especially that I've given you a real gold gem about opposition in chess, even from kings on the opposite diagonal from each other. The kings are both opposing, and whoever moves here has the opposition. So if they could move their king, if black could move their king to the diagonal white square where the bishop is, then they would have the opposition, but we have got other things on the board. Now this exercise is to show you the discovery of check. Now as you can see, this bishop, if this pawn is here and this bishop is here, it can, as I've explained to you what the bishop can do, attack the king. Now that also brings the bishop here. If there's no pawn here, ma'am, Luke's better half. If there's no pawn here and the bishop's sitting here, it's check. Now another thing I want to say to you and impress upon you is you cannot put your king in check. You cannot put your king, as I've shown you a few times, you cannot put your king or move your king to check, or you cannot move something that makes your king in check. I will give you an example, and that's going to be the end of the session. Here, see the red line? This is what is called discovery check in chess. This pawn is in the way of the attack on the white king on h1. Don't worry about the squares. And this is a pawn move that is going onwards and upwards, and it's very easy to promote it for black here, with the bishop on board especially. This pawn, when it moves, is you could go discovery check, because it's a discovery check. And then the king has to do something about the check. And then this pawn is a little bit closer to queening, so the king would like to try and stop. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about a discovery check. So this is a discovery check. Now I want to show you the opposite of this. So that's a discovery attack by moving something in the way of a piece that can attack if that piece or pawn is a king in the way. So once it moves, like even if it was a king here, once it moves, not here or here, because then the bishop's still not checking the king, but here or here or here or here or here or here, is check, if you get what I mean. So now I want to show you another eye concept, is this, and that is definitely the end of the session, otherwise YouTube will stay too long. Okay, now here it's black to move. Now, black can only move their pawn, but guess what? They're not allowed to. See, black suggested what move to play, and this, by the way, is going to be a draw. This position is going to be a draw, by the way, because it's going to end up with insufficient material. Now notice this, black is to move here. It's black's move. We've just programmed this into the computer to say it's black to move here. Now notice, if black goes to push their pawn, they can't. Why not? If we take this off, this pawn, which it isn't, it's on the board still, if we move it, we can't, because it won't allow us, because we're in check. Now, I'll tell you the truth, there's been a lot of times I've played this move in lightning chess, and I've lost my king. Okay? There were moves, I've lost my king in lightning chess, no joke, in national tournaments. There are other ones where I make this move, etc., and I can go on about this till the cows come home. I'm not going to. But notice that the only move that black will play here, so if I force the computer to move, the only move is going to be a king move, no pawn move. It's not going to suggest to push the pawn. And now we'll show you the final for the session. Bishop takes pawn, and it now comes up with information sign, insufficient material, which I can hardly read. I've only got 800,000 functioning parts of my eye left. Okay, that is the end of my session, and anyone else who's watched it, I hope you learnt something there, and please remember this is for free. Now, my friend has been saying to me I shouldn't. Even people at the chess club have been saying that. But I'm not asking for that herewith. But I am looking into that for the future. But not at this stage, and definitely not for Luke's partner. This is free. Thank you very much. I hope that wasn't too much. I'm just joking. It was.